Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai here. It's been ages since I made a non-Fate anime-based lore video. When talking about tomboys, though, I realized now would be a brilliant time to finally cover the lore of one of my favorite anime series, Kill la Kill. It's a bizarre anime, infamously known for its bold presentation. Some people worship the anime as a subversion of raunchy tropes, whereas others feel it's just pandering to the male gaze. I, for one, find that debate incredibly pointless. The way this anime frames our relationship with clothes and modesty can be overanalyzed to death, but ultimately it's a fun sci-fi fantasy with amazing style and animation. Yes, it's sexy, and no amount of subversion is going to please people who don't want to look at that stuff. For those of us with taste, however, Kill la Kill uses these ideas to tell a surprisingly compelling narrative, one that ironically goes beyond skin deep. It's not just about grill memes and PogChamps, though those are quite fun. I hope you'll join me in exploring just how deep this story really is, and why I love it so much. Life fibers are an organism that drifts through space, searching for intelligent life. Once found, the life fibers facilitate evolution in that species, molding them into a more suitable energy source. When the moment is right, they turn their victims into clothes and blanket their entire planet in a cocoon sphere. The life fibers thrive off the planet, exploiting it until it explodes, in turn scattering the life fibers, which spread out into space in search of even more hosts to consume. In this manner, they reproduce and infest the universe. Possessing organic beings isn't so simple, however. The life fibers are simply too powerful to possess their hosts directly. Stitching themselves straight into the body causes their victims to die. However, if they instead dwell within their victim's clothing, they can exert their control from a safe distance. Thus, causing species to evolve means conditioning them to wear clothes out of shame, relying on clothing as a quintessential component of their culture. Needless to say, Earth itself has been chosen by the life fibers, which have targeted humans since the dawn of civilization. The fibers played an active part in getting apes to evolve to men. Once humanity had embraced clothing on a cultural level, the life fibers went dormant, hoping to one day awaken to a crop of humans ripe for consumption. The primordial life fiber, from which all other life fibers originate, was entrusted to a single human family, the Kiryuin, who look after it across generations. The current elders of the family were tasked with overseeing the life fibers in hibernation until they awaken. A woman named Ragyo Kiryuin happened to be the head of the family who actually witnessed this awakening. Just as intended, Ragyo pledged herself to the life fibers, dedicating herself to their conquest of the planet. In that endeavor, she founded the clothing company Revox, a rearranging of the word covers. Revox would produce clothing infused with life fibers and distribute them across the planet. As Revox clothes became an international success, more and more humans would be wearing attire designed to ultimately consume them. Ragyo herself was highly compatible with the life fibers, and she allowed them to enhance her body with tremendous regenerative abilities. She was a rarity, however, because again, the power of life fibers was usually too strong for living beings to endure. In addition to making clothes for the average human, Ragyo would spend her time seeking out more rare humans like herself with a high tolerance for life fibers. Initially, this search took her to an African village filled with potential candidates. Sadly, the village had just been caught up in a civil war, resulting in most of the villagers dying. Nonetheless, Ragyo stepped into the conflict, killing all the soldiers with her life fiber-infused body. So much potential was wasted, but one survivor remained, a little girl with exceptional compatibility with life fibers. Ragyo took her in and gave her the name Rei Hoomaru. Since that day, Rei has been absolutely loyal to Ragyo, professionally serving as her secretary at Revox, believing that the life fibers will help eradicate this cruel world of unjust humans. It is worth noting that, while Ragyo was serving the life fibers, she could not communicate with them, and thus held the burden of needing to research how they worked. This led her to falling in love with and marrying a brilliant scientist by the name Soichiro Kiryuin. The two shared a passion in researching the life fibers, but in truth, Ragyo was only ever using him for his skills. Tragically, Soichiro wouldn't understand Ragyo's malevolent intent until it was too late. Knowing the life fibers would consume all of humanity anyway, she had no qualms about using her own children as test subjects. Ragyo and Soichiro had 2 children, one of whom was still in the womb. The eldest daughter was Satsuki, and at just 1 year old, Ragyo attempted to infuse her infantile body with life fibers. Unlike Ragyo, Satsuki's body lacked inherent compatibility, and the surgery failed because a full year was already too old by the time they started. Satsuki would be able to grow up as the family's heir, but she could not be the host Ragyo wanted her to be. Since Satsuki was too old to experiment on, Ragyo got the idea of infusing her other daughter, who had just been born, with the life fibers instead. The innocent baby was cut open and had life fibers sewn into her heart. While the theory may have been sound, the poor child appeared to die during the operation, and so Ragyo had it discarded as another failure. These experiments showed Soichiro his wife's evil and cruelty. Realizing how dangerous the Kiryuin conglomerate had become, he secretly plotted to destroy it. Ragyo may have discarded her youngest child, but Soichiro immediately went to retrieve the baby and resuscitate it. He kept this daughter's survival a secret, raising her in isolation while simultaneously pretending to assist his wife. After all, he wasn't about to forget his eldest daughter Satsuki either. When Satsuki turned 5 years old, Soichiro entrusted her with the truth regarding the life fibers and their villainy. He told her about the terrible things her mother was doing, and why he had to oppose her. This raises an important question though. How does one fight the life fibers? Well, given the life fibers are essentially threads, it's possible to cut them, at least to an extent. Satsuki is eventually given the secret sword Bakuzan, a katana sharp enough to sever most life fibers. Of course, that's only if you can land a hit. Humans usually aren't able to directly merge with life fibers, but by wearing life fiber-infused clothing, they can inherit tremendous power. The amount of life fibers in a given outfit can vary, but clothes that are sewn completely out of life fibers are called kamui. The Kiryuin family had made its own kamui, Junketsu, but sealed it away because they couldn't keep it under control. Soichiro introduced Satsuki to this kamui, telling her she'd wear it as her wedding gown. It was a way for Soichiro to prepare his eldest daughter to fight for the sake of humanity. It was really the last thing he could do for her, because he knew his betrayal of the Kiryuins would be found out. Sure enough, the family attempted to assassinate Soichiro. Going along with it, he faked his own death and took on a new, secret identity as an old codger named Ishin Matoi. In hiding, he raised his younger daughter in secret, naming her Ryuko Matoi. As soon as she was able to attend school, though, he had Ryuko moved to her school's dorms. Without much parental supervision, she became a delinquent, often fighting and even joining a gang for a time. This may sound cruel, but Ishin Matoi did this for Ryuko's safety. After all, he had to dedicate all his time to finding ways to oppose the Kiryuin family. A major part of this endeavor was founding Nudist Beach, an underground rebellion tasked with fighting the life fibers. This group developed various anti-life fiber weapons, including their ridiculous robots, the Dotonbori Robo, or DTR. Their flagship, the SS Naked Sun, or Naked Soul, can take the form of a massive seam ripper meant to penetrate the primordial life fiber to reach its core. They have guns and daggers made to slice through life fiber clothing, but they ultimately aren't as strong as they could be. Turns out, the only way to guarantee severing a life fiber is to cut it from 2 sides. As such, Ishin Matoi developed the ultimate weapon against them, the rending scissors. No life fiber can survive being caught in its jaws. Again, however, this weapon is only as good as its wielder, and for that, Ishin wished to develop his own kamui, an outfit made entirely of life fibers that would agree to fight against its own kind. In this endeavor, he had the help of his fellow nudists, Aikuro Mikisugi, Tsumugu Kinagase, and Kinue Kinagase. They prepared a prototype kamui and had Kinue test it out. As an ordinary human, however, the kamui was so strong it tore her body apart. Though devastated by their loss, Nudist Beach kept working on the Kamui after Kinue used her last words to encourage them. Kamui function by drinking the blood of their wearer, so unless that person has a high tolerance for life fibers, they can die. As such, there was only one person Ishin could have wear his creation, his daughter Ryuko. Ragyo's cruel experiments on her as an infant wound up making her a life form comprised of both human DNA and life fibers. As a hybrid being, she can wear and sync up with a Kamui like nobody else. Thus, Ishin Matoi's true masterpiece is the Kamui Senketsu, a school uniform custom-made for Ryuko, pre-treated with her blood for added compatibility. What makes Senketsu unique to other Kamui is that, by being made with Ryuko's genetic structure, he too is a hybrid being containing both human and life fiber elements. He's more than just a strong piece of clothing. He's a uniform capable of absorbing other life fibers, and with every fiber he absorbs, his power of absorption grows even stronger. In this regard, Ishin truly put all his hope for saving humankind in Ryuko's hands. Yet, throughout all her childhood, he never mentioned any of this to her. She just assumed her dad was a weird old man who neglected her growing up. Meanwhile, Ragyo continued her own research. Nui Harime, the Grand Couturier, was another of her attempts to infuse humans with life fibers. Rather than trying to merge life fibers with her own flesh and blood children, she instead decided to construct an artificial womb made from life fibers and have that give birth. Nui, then, was a humanoid child composed of life fibers, sharing Ragyo's own regenerative qualities. Being so in tune with life fibers allowed her to become a valuable asset to Revox, sewing their clothing with ease. While she and Ryuko both have life fiber-infused hearts, the way Nui was born meant she could not benefit from life fiber clothing. Let's return to Satsuki, who had to live under Ragyo knowing of her evil. From the moment her father told her the truth, Satsuki began planning ways to use the power of the Kiryuin family against Ragyo. This marks her ambition, in that even as a child, she was amassing strength. While the Kiryuin family is a massive financial power in its own right, I'd say Satsuki's greatest assets are her loyal friends and allies. Her longest-running friendship is with Nonon Jakuzure, a girl she's known since kindergarten. Both girls came from wealthy families, and while Nonon felt empowered by the many boys who would do her bidding, she quickly realized that Satsuki was aiming for power on an entirely different level. Satsuki aimed for a position where she could look down on all of the world from above to guide them with a stoic will. Admiring this ambition, Nonon has devoted herself to being Satsuki's right-hand woman, vowing to look down at the world from the same heights. In middle school, Satsuki met a fellow student named Ira Gamagori. He had a strong sense of justice, intervening in conflicts among the student body, but his authority wasn't at all respected. He could not so much as save a single classmate from jumping off the school's roof. It was then that Satsuki stepped in. Not only did she arrange for the classmate to survive, she also dethroned his bullies both on a financial level and by besting them with a sword. Ira was grateful to Satsuki, but nonetheless feared she imposed a different kind of tyranny on the world. He once tried to resist that tyranny in battle, vowing to never kneel down before her. Satsuki, who had been training to fight her entire life, was able to defeat him, but before he could collapse to the ground, he used her scabbard to support himself. Impressed by his resolve, Satsuki asked Ira to wait 2 years after his graduation so he could join her at a high school they could rule together. In that time, Satsuki recruited more allies, including Hoka Inumuta, a talented freelance hacker. Because his father was always absent, he was instead raised almost exclusively by his mom. He found himself comfortable in solitude, taking an early interest in computers. By his middle school years, he began living by himself, forging his own records in the city's database. Hoping to test his hacking prowess, he sabotaged the Kiryuin security network and tanked their stocks. While he'd done something quite amazing, it wasn't long before the family tracked him down. Rather than punishing him, however, Satsuki recruited him, promising that under her, he could change not just the virtual world, but the real one too. Before high school, she recruited one more ally, Uzu Sanageyama, the leader of a North Kanto gang. Uzu prided himself on his swordsmanship, specifically his keen eyesight that let him anticipate his opponent's movements. Winning him over was only a matter of demonstrating strength. Satsuki knocked out his entire gang with a single surge of chi and felled the arrogant punk without even looking. Like the others, Satsuki recruited him, promising to make her high school an arena where he could unleash his skills. Satsuki was referring to Honoji Academy, a school designed to test the creation of various life fiber-infused garments for the Revox Corporation. Ragyo commissioned the school so that Satsuki could lead the student body and oversee the development of these clothes. However, Satsuki found this school to be the perfect opportunity to raise an army capable of dismantling her mother's throne. While presiding over the school, Satsuki appointed her newly joined allies to the student council. Jakuzure, Gamagori, Inumuta, and Sanageyama served as her elite four, each tasked with handling different aspects of the school's infrastructure. She created a school through which the strong would prevail. Students with the most promise would be granted different kinds of Goku uniforms, specialized uniforms infused with life fibers. The concentration of these life fibers was far smaller than that of a Kamui, but far greater than the clothing Revox was selling to the rest of the world. Through their own merit, Honoji students could earn uniforms of increasing capacity. This had the added incentive of granting their families a higher status in the surrounding city, with the lowest performers residing in the lower slums. The creation of these uniforms was handled by the president of the sewing club, Shiro Iori. His uncle, Mitsuzo Soroi, happened to be Satsuki's personal butler. As Shiro and Satsuki experimented with making stronger and stronger Goku uniforms for Ragyo, they were really planning to use them against her. Having no clue of these plans, though, the rebel group Nudist Beach perceived Honoji as a major threat. One of its lead members, Aikuro Mikisugi, decided to infiltrate the school, pretending to be a teacher. Ragyo's relationship with Satsuki is quite toxic. She appears to trust her daughter, but only does so by keeping a tight yet twisted grip on her. Ragyo entrusts Satsuki with so much power out of arrogance, thinking nobody would dare to oppose her. She pushed her luck in this way until discovering the existence of Nudist Beach. She did not realize Isshin Matoi was actually her husband in disguise, but she did know he was developing some kind of secret weapon. Sure enough, Isshin had finally completed Senketsu, and had just sent his daughter Ryuko a letter asking her to return to his home. The very day Ryuko was to arrive, however, Ragyo sent Nui Harime to attack. Thankfully, Isshin saw this coming, and hid Senketsu within the lab, instead confronting Nui with the rending scissors. Believing these to be the secret weapon, Nui fought Isshin with the hopes of stealing the blades. Isshin put up a decent fight, but stood no chance against a girl born from life fibers. She fatally slashed and stabbed him with his own scissors, only pausing for a brief moment at the sound of Ryuko calling for her father from outside. Isshin used this moment to separate the scissors into two blades, swinging one to carve into Nui's left eye. Infuriated by this, Nui stole one half of the scissor blade and used the other to impale Isshin onto the wall. Ryuko entered the lab just in time to witness her father's final moments. He gave her a choice. If she wanted to continue his fight, she should take the scissor blade and avenge him. Before he could finish explaining everything to Ryuko, though, she saw Nui with the other blade and gave chase. Nui fled into the night, but Ryuko could only make out a girl's silhouette. The mansion then exploded, killing Isshin along with the truth. Confused and enraged, Ryuko Matoi enrolled in Honoji Academy, hoping to find the person who killed her father. While the tyrannical academy above irritates her, she finds herself taking a liking to the slums. On her first day of class, she meets Mako Mankanshok, a goofy underachiever with blinding energy. Mako sleeps through class and has no friends, making her a no-star student. Her life in the slums is basically guaranteed, but she and her family seem totally okay with that. Her dad barely makes ends meet as a back alley doctor, and her mom cooks for them mystery meat croquettes. Her brother, Mataro, is a street-smart kid who knows the slums like the back of his hand. Hell, even their dog Guts is charismatic in the face of this mediocrity. Mako is friendly and explains the city and school to Ryuko. When Satsuki makes an appearance in front of the students, however, Ryuko stands defiantly against her. Finding the intruder a nuisance, Satsuki has one of her club leaders fight her, and without a Goku uniform, Ryuko gets her ass whooped. she reluctantly retreats to the ruins of her father's lab, tormented by her own weakness. It is then that Aikuro, the now head of Nudist Beach in Ishin's absence, deviously leads Ryuko to Senketsu by opening a trapdoor. In the lab's basement, the blood from Ryuko's bleeding arm seeps into a pile of clothes, awakening Senketsu from his slumber. By design, he finds Ryuko's blood especially tasty, and it compels him to force himself on her. He wants to be worn, begging Ryuko to put him on. Their strong connection allows Senketsu to talk to Ryuko, and so even though the outfit seems shameless, she's willing to try it after realizing her dad made him. Technically, Senketsu didn't even have a name up till now, but Ryuko names him off the blood that unites them. With newfound power and shame, Ryuko reluctantly returns to the school and defeats her prior opponent. With her half of the Scissor Blade, she is able to slice through Goku uniforms and absorb their banshi, a specific thread that holds them together. Satsuki immediately realizes Senketsu is a Kamui and believes that Ryuko could be a valuable asset. Instead of explaining her circumstances and formally recruiting Ryuko, however, Satsuki figures she can use Ryuko's foul attitude as a method of testing and improving the school's uniforms. By having a strong opponent, even the Elite Four can improve before confronting Ragyo. Thus, rather than recruiting Ryuko, Satsuki provokes her, insinuating she knows the truth about Ishin's killer. Ryuko is branded an enemy of the Academy, and all of the toughest students target her in search of fame and stronger uniforms. Ryuko's only allies come in the form of the Mankanshok family, who welcome her with open arms, and Aikuro, who understands she's the only hope Nudist Beach has of stopping the life fibers. Sadly, Ryuko has a lot to learn about Senketsu, and starts off rejecting him for their indecent transformation. This rejection forces Senketsu to drink more of her blood, drastically limiting her ability to fight. Furthermore, fellow Nudist Beach member Tsugumu Kinagase has a well-founded hatred for Kamui after the prototype killed his sister. He always aims to keep Senketsu in check, even if it means attacking Ryuko at the school. Early on, however, Senketsu demonstrates he's more than just a sailor uniform by going out of his way to protect Ryuko and ward Tsugumu off. Soon enough, Ryuko and Senketsu grow strong enough together that Satsuki needs a Kamui of her own. She returns to the Kiryuin house and approaches Junketsu. Against her mother's wishes, she puts on the uniform, and it quickly tries to take control of her. Unlike Ryuko, Satsuki isn't infused with life fibers, and Junketsu was never pre-treated with her DNA. As such, Satsuki has to exert control over the Kamui through sheer willpower. She endures this pain, embracing it as yet another tool for gaining strength. When Satsuki battles Ryuko in their respective Kamui, Ryuko is forced to address her own shame. If she wants to avenge her father, she needs to fully accept and wear Senketsu with confidence. Only through doing so can she hope to match Satsuki. Wanting a piece of the action, Sanageyama insists on fighting Ryuko. His Goku uniform, the Blade Regalia, is designed to enhance his eyesight and kendo skills. This allows him to accurately observe and predict Ryuko's movements. At first, this gives him an edge in the fight, but as soon as Ryuko understands his dependence, she has parts of Senketsu break off and blind him. Taken off guard, Sanageyama takes a humiliating defeat. Ashamed of his arrogance, he vows to make things right by asking the sewing club to literally sew his eyes shut. After this heightens his other senses, he challenges Ryuko to a rematch. Stronger than ever, he totally kicks her ass, only losing after his Goku uniform fails to keep up with his movements. Needing to grow stronger, Ryuko gets the idea to start a fight club at the academy. By defeating various opponents, she can raise the club's value, and in turn, grant Mako and her family a better life, or so she thinks. Thankfully, the fight club does succeed, and with it comes abundant wealth. However, this sudden luxury is too much for the Mankanshok family, and soon the charm they once had gets lost in pursuit of material gain. Ryuko, wishing for the old days, quits the club despite being its means of success. Mako, not wanting to disappoint her family, is given the chance to fight Ryuko with her own Goku uniform. Ryuko refuses to hurt a friend, and so Mako beats her up until breaking down. Ashamed of her own actions, Mako scolds her family and shuts down the fight club, returning them to a life in the slums. These early battles are useful, but ultimately too slow for Satsuki's tastes. To strengthen the students even further, she announces the Academy's first naturals election, an all-out brawl to restructure the school and divvy out newer, more powerful uniforms. Obviously, neither Ryuko nor the Elite Four struggle in this endeavor, and so the finals are set up as a King of the Hill deathmatch. If Ryuko can defeat each of the Elite Four, Satsuki promises to tell her the truth about her father. Her first match is up against Ira Gamagori. His uniform, the Shackle Regalia, is themed around bondage and masochism. It charges power by enduring attacks, and he unleashes that built-up energy in devastating bursts. This has Ryuko on the ropes, or vines as it were, until she realizes her bond with Senketsu is strong enough that they can experiment with different forms of their own. She allows herself to be swallowed by Ira's uniform, and from the inside, Senketsu transforms into Senketsu Senjin, sprouting blades that carve Ira up. Like an idiot, he tries to atone for his loss through seppuku, not realizing Satsuki was using these fights to build stronger uniforms. She stops him from making a fatal mistake, allowing Ryuko to continue on to her next opponent. Hoka Inumuta uses the Probe Regalia, a Tron-esque uniform that helps him gather data on his enemies. While he's adept at hand-to-hand combat, his main strength comes from outsmarting his enemies. Through analysis, he can exploit Ryuko's weaknesses, and even camouflage himself for easy hits. Smarts can't always beat recklessness though, so Ryuko resolves the fight by stretching Senketsu across the entire arena and crushing him from above. Next up is Nonon Jakuzure, head of the non-athletic clubs. She personally specializes in music, and her symphony regalia is designed to enhance those skills. Generally speaking, she fights with sound waves emitted from massive speakers. One of her forms is an airship, from which she is able to see the world from Satsuki's perspective. Ryuko counters it with Senketsu Shippu, allowing her to fly. Even if Nonon finds herself defeated, she can still mount one final offensive triggered when her audience calls for an encore. The strength of Nonon's musical tones disrupt Ryuko's bond with Senketsu, until they realize they can channel the sound and negate it through a form called Senketsu Mubyoshi. By gathering Nonon's sound and launching it back at her, Ryuko earns another victory. Uzu Sanageyama, with a new and improved blade regalia, would normally be Ryuko's next opponent, but that gets interrupted when Nui Harime shows up to cause havoc. With ease, she is able to isolate and pluck out the Banshee from his uniform, rendering him powerless. Senketsu, which was constructed with far more complexity, doesn't rely on a single Banshee, allowing Ryuko to fight back. The moment Nui whips out the other half of the Scissor Blade, however, Ryuko goes into a mad rage, finally confronting the woman who killed her dad. Through these consecutive fights, Ryuko's been pushing Senketsu way past its limit. Without being in a calm state of mind, without being in sync with Senketsu, Ryuko risks having all this newly gained power take over. Provoked by Nui, Ryuko's blood boils, warping herself and Senketsu into a more bestial form. She becomes a monster that even Nudist Beach considers silencing, but Satsuki takes it upon herself to put Ryuko out of her misery. Satsuki lays the beat down on Ryuko and nearly deals the final blow, but Mako rushes to the arena first and clutches on to her one and only friend. In her own bizarre way, Mako is able to calm Ryuko down, bringing the event to a close. Satsuki banishes Nui from the school grounds, but it's a rather hollow effort. Ryuko hates what she put Senketsu through and vows not to wear him anymore. It takes her time and encouragement to realize that Senketsu forgives her and wants to be worn regardless. After gaining the confidence never to lose control like that again, Ryuko tries to save one of her classmates, only to discover it's a trap set by Nui. Taking advantage of the situation, Nui uses her half of the Scissor Blade to dice Senketsu into tiny pieces. Satsuki only arrives in the aftermath, unable to do more than collect the pieces. Writing Ryuko off as a loss, Satsuki instead puts all of her effort into the Tri-City School's raid trip. All of the starred students at Honoji Academy travel through the remainder of Japan, subjugating the entire country under the Kiryuin conglomerate. Ryuko finally awakens from her defeat, only to find herself in possession of a single piece of Senketsu. His other pieces were sewn into various students to power them up during the raid trip. Desperate to get her friend back, Ryuko rushes between the raid's destinations, defeating Honoji students to assemble all of the stolen pieces. Once she has enough to reassemble Senketsu, she puts herself at risk to steal back the final component of her outfit, the glove Sekiteko from Satsuki. In the time it took Ryuko to return Senketsu to his original form, Honoji Academy had successfully completed the raid trip. Hoping to resist national conquest, Nudist Beach formally makes a move, exposing their location to the Elite Four. Nonon takes this chance to demolish their underground base, which just so happens to be the true purpose of the raid trip. It's all been an effort to flush out the rebels from hiding. That said, Nonon, perhaps under orders from Satsuki, didn't destroy all of the base. Thus, while the students travel back to Honoji Academy, Ryuko and Mako stay behind so that their teacher, Aikuro, can both show them the base and explain to them the dark truth of the life fibers. At first, Ryuko is upset to hear that Senketsu is being used as a tool to slaughter his own kind, but he ultimately insists it's what he truly wants to do. Knowing that the life fibers plan to devour humanity, he yearns to protect Ryuko and help her survive. Thus, informally, Ryuko and Mako wind up joining Nudist Beach, or what's left of it, to oppose Satsuki's tyranny. Of course, they don't know Satsuki's true intentions. She's busy preparing for Honoji Academy's great culture and sports festival, which is really just a grand stage for Ragyo to come visit. It is from the Academy that Ragyo intends to start dominating the Earth. She hopes to have the entire city possessed by life fiber vessels known as covers. This is also where Satsuki plans to make her move and finally kill Ragyo. To add to this madness, Ryuko and her team show up, just in time to witness Satsuki's betrayal. When Ragyo takes the stage and tries to initiate her plan, Satsuki steps in from behind and runs her through with Bakuzan. Sadly, they've gravely underestimated Ragyo's life fiber-infused body. With ease, Ragyo frees herself, heals up, and subjugates all of the Academy's students with a technique called mind stitching. By weaving threads inside her victims and enveloping their brains, Ragyo can manipulate people like human puppets. She tries this on Ryuko, forcing her to fight Satsuki, but it turns out that Ryuko is resistant to such control. Defiantly, Ryuko is able to reach in and rip out the thread wrapped around her brain. It's something she can do as a hybrid life form, but while she doesn't know that, Ragyo does. Immediately, Ragyo realizes that Ryuko is in fact her own daughter, the one she thought died from her experiments. While Ryuko is occupied fighting Nui, Satsuki tries to finish the fight with her mother. Sadly, so long as Ragyo's body is held together by even a single life fiber, she can continually regenerate. Bakuzan is only a single sword, and as such can't cut these strong fibers from two sides at once. This leaves Satsuki vulnerable as Ragyo beats her senseless and steals Junketsu from her. Ragyo then horrifies Ryuko with the truth, pulling out her heart to reveal it covered in life fibers. Ryuko watches as her own exposed organ retreats into her chest and heals up. To stop the covers from gobbling up more humans, Satsuki detonates the Colosseum, scattering everyone present. In the aftermath of the cultural festival, covers can be seen wandering all across Japan. The surviving students, including the Elite Four, have joined up with Nudist Beach to oppose Ragyo's rule from the shadows. Bakuzan was broken in two during the fight, so Nudist Beach modified its pieces into separate blades. In addition, they've created devices capable of yanking captive humans out of the covers. Even so, they're struggling, as they lose more victims to the covers than they can rescue. Back at the academy, Satsuki is held captive, punished inappropriately for betraying her mother. Regardless, she hasn't given up and bides her time in captivity sharpening a false toenail into a blade. Nui takes over the sewing club's members and facilities to construct a brand new kamui for Ragyo called Shinra-Koketsu. Ryuko was left in an unconscious state after the festival. She and Senketsu were taken along with Nudist Beach, but when she wakes up, she is no one's ally. Ryuko may have lost control of herself back at the elections, but finding out now that she's part life fiber freaks her out on a whole new level. She feels she's a monster, and in her panic and despair, she once again rejects Senketsu. After demonstrating her insane strength in the buff, she rides off to try and fight Ragyo on her own. The rest of Nudist Beach boards the SS Naked Sun, and also heads for the academy to rescue Satsuki. The timing works out, as Satsuki breaks herself out of prison and escapes the building in time to reunite with her beloved Elite Four. Meanwhile, Ryuko fights in futility against Nui. The two, both being merged with life fibers, simply regenerate from their wounds. Ragyo wants to control Ryuko, and does so by forcing her to wear Junketsu against her will. Poor Ryuko is filled with false memories, delusions of a wholesome relationship with the mother who in reality discarded her. This brainwashing works, and a manipulated Ryuko goes to attack Nudist Beach wearing Junketsu as her main Kamui. This leaves Satsuki feeling rather powerless, and with the hopes of facing Ryuko, her long-lost sister, she teams up with Senketsu. The sisters, each wearing each other's Kamui, face each other in brutal combat. Despite not being made for each other, Satsuki and Senketsu are quite compatible, united in their desire to snap Ryuko back to normal. Sadly, it's not enough to win against a truly fused being. Ryuko tears Senketsu off Satsuki's body, and in desperation, Mako rushes in to try and reason with Ryuko like before. Ryuko nearly kills Mako, but Senketsu jumps in to defend her. Mako winds up putting on Senketsu, giving Satsuki the idea to have them infiltrate Ryuko's body through a gap in Junketsu's armor. Mentally speaking, this allows Mako and Senketsu to impede upon Ragyo's brainwashing. Ryuko comes to her senses and tears Junketsu off her body, despite it being fused with her. Finally, she realizes that Mako and Senketsu, hell, even Satsuki, all of them are her friends. They couldn't care less about her being some kind of hybrid being, and so neither should she. Once more, she puts on Senketsu and fights Nui Harime more powerful than before. She steals back both halves of the rending scissors and dual wields them to lop off Nui's arms. Having cut the arms from both sides, Ryuko is able to permanently destroy and absorb them, forcing Nui to retreat while spraying blood from her shoulders. For as aggressive as Ryuko was in her rampage, Satsuki takes the initiative to apologize first. She apologizes for trying to use Ryuko as a bitter rival when she should have joined forces all along. Ryuko can see that her sister has a dysfunctional yet endearing bond with the Elite Four, just as she has a delightful bond with the wacky Mankanshok family. This helps them make amends. For the first time, the two sisters are brought together to fight on the same team. Time is of the essence, however. Ragyo returns to her estate to retrieve the primordial life fiber. It takes off, flying like a blimp of sorts, heading toward Honoji. The Academy holds a transmitter, which communicates with a satellite in space that, once activated, will command all life fibers worn by humans all over the world to begin enveloping the planet in a sheet of life fiber cloth. Shiro Iori, powered up with his own Goku uniform, sews together upgraded forms of all the Elite Four's uniforms, along with Mako's Fight Club uniform, and even mends Junketsu so that Satsuki can use it again. They need to make haste for the Academy before Ragyo and the Primordial Life Fiber arrive. Luckily, using their Shippu forms, Ryuko and Satsuki are able to intercept Ragyo midway. They figure Ragyo herself isn't as important as destroying the life fiber, so Ryuko makes a plan. She pretends to be cut in two by Ragyo's blades, but secretly holds herself together by a single thread. While Satsuki distracts Ragyo, Ryuko heals up and goes apeshit on the primordial life fiber. Inside, she finds the core and tries to sever it, but needs a little help from Nudist Beach, who show up by ramming their ship into the life fiber. Together, they tear straight through, sinking their colossal foe. Of course, this doesn't let Ragyo off the hook. She's still a major threat, and makes her way to Honoji Academy on her own, even giving Nui Harime a new set of arms. She wears the Shinra-Koketsu, the supposed ultimate Kamui Nui made for her. For added strength, this Kamui absorbed Rei Ho'omaru, benefiting from her compatibility with the life fibers. It has an ability, Absolute Domination, which can control all other life fibers. Using it, Ragyo can subdue all the Goku uniforms and even Junketsu. She then orders all the individual threads from the primordial life fiber to reassemble at school. The fibers swarm the radio tower, protecting it from harm. The only ones who can oppose her now are Ryuko and Senketsu, who are neither human nor life fiber, and yet both at the same time. Senketsu impales Ragyo and drills through the Kamui to force Rei out. This interrupts absolute domination, freeing everyone trapped by it. Combining once more, Ryuko and Senketsu team up with Satsuki to rip through Ragyo from both sides. Nudist Beach uses this moment to penetrate and obliterate the radio tower. When victory seems assured, however, Ragyo reveals one last trump card. Nui, by sacrificing herself, can become one with the life fibers and merge with Ragyo. Shinra-Koketsu is restored, able to launch into space like a rocket. Clearly, Ragyo is trying to activate the satellite directly, and nobody else can pursue her that far. She initiates the blanketing of the planet, turning all the world's citizens into life fiber cocoons. The Goku uniforms aren't much help against this, so everyone at Nudist Beach instead decides to let Senketsu absorb their outfits. Absorbing these uniforms, along with Junketsu, transforms Senketsu into Senketsu Kisaragi, the most powerful form yet. With it, Ryuko launches into space and confronts Ragyo in orbit. The world's strongest Kamui clash in space, but Ryuko doesn't plan to slay her mother, not at this point anyway. Senketsu has already realized his true purpose and strength, his ability to absorb life fibers, and so he uses it to consume Ragyo's clothes right off her body. Empowered like never before, Ryuko contacts the satellite and calls off the life fiber invasion. The cocoon sphere falls apart, freeing the humans inside. Ragyo, refusing to let herself be killed by Ryuko, decides to take her own life, crushing her life fiber heart while ominously declaring that more life fibers will eventually threaten the Earth again. Absorbing Shinra-Koketsu was not without consequence, however. Senketsu notices his strength waning, and uses the last of his time alive to safely transport Ryuko back to Earth. Declaring how happy he's been being worn by her, he burns away in the atmosphere, leaving Ryuko to fall back down all alone. Except she really isn't. She's made so many friends across this journey, and even discovered her own sister. Everyone bands together to break Ryuko's fall, and the world is saved by a crew of naked nudists. Since Honoji Academy was made primarily to facilitate this conflict, Satsuki plans to graduate all the students so they can go study at other schools. She seems to have lost her fighting spirit, or at least that's what her friends think. What they don't realize is that there's one figurative loose thread to deal with. Rei Ho'omaru, Ragyo's secretary, still wishes to carry out the plan, even though there are no longer enough life fibers to do so. She captures Satsuki and Mako, using them to power the Academy's final defense apparatus. With it, she tries to take over the school, attacking the students with life fiber doppelgangers of the elite student council. Without any Kamui or Goku uniforms, the students struggle, but Ryuko helps them realize that even without special clothing, they have the skills to take these opponents down, especially since they're fighting their former selves. After hearing a message from Senketsu's lingering will, Ryuko watches as the rending scissors, which were left in orbit, come falling down to Earth. With the scissors in hand, Ryuko sprints up the Academy's arms and slices through it with a form she calls Final Graduation Mode. Rei Ho'omaru stubbornly resists even after being defeated, until Satsuki displays a new resolve. Her fighting spirit hasn't died at all, but rather than opposing the world with a sword, she aims to face the world diplomatically. She promises to fix this broken civilization without the life fibers, and recruits Rei to aid in this endeavor. With things settled, the students of Honoji Academy all go their separate ways. Ryuko more or less stays with the Mankanshoks, relieved to know that Senketsu will always live on in her heart and memories. Clearly, she still maintains a good friendship with Satsuki, as they both join Mako on a date together, finally enjoying the peaceful world they fought to protect. Some of you may not be aware, but Kill la Kill got a video game on the PlayStation 4 called Kill la Kill If. As the name implies, it's a what-if scenario to the original story, featuring an alternate dream timeline created by Satsuki's subconscious desires. Apparently, the life fibers can interfere with reality, and for the sake of this game's plot, have used Satsuki's ambition to manifest another world, a dream world meant to trap them. You play first as Satsuki, going through her route, before getting to see those same events from Ryuko's perspective and finally settle things. It starts out at the Naturals election, with Ryuko having to fight each of the Elite Four. The raid trip is mostly skipped over to proceed straight to the cultural festival. The same events happen, but in slightly different ways. Unlike before, however, Satsuki is the one to lead the charge. When confronting the primordial life fiber, she has Junketsu absorb the other uniforms, finally gaining her own ultimate form called Junketsu Shinzui. While fighting, however, she becomes possessed. This whole time, she's been playing into the primordial life fiber's hand, perpetuating the dream by participating. It's not a fight she can win, as within this ambiguous space, the primordial life fiber can continually obtain more energy from other worlds. The only way to break this dream is for Satsuki to reject it outright, but in her berserk state, she can't see the big picture. For once, it's Ryuko's turn to knock some sense into Satsuki. Just like the primordial life fiber, Ryuko has Senketsu absorb fibers from other worlds to become Senketsu Kisaragi. The two ultimate Kamui face off, ending in a stalemate with the girls both stripped. Thinking clearly now, Satsuki realizes what must be done and takes the rending scissors to cut not the primordial life fiber, but her own delusions that maintain this world. In the end, Ryuko and Satsuki wake up towards the earlier part of the anime story, making it so that, technically, the game's events mean nothing in the grander scheme of things. It's still a pretty fun game though, albeit a bit short and repetitive. There you have it, the complete lore of one of my all-time favorite anime. It's absolutely legendary, and will go down as a bold show that wasn't afraid to strut its stuff in an age where sex is so heavily condemned. What do you think? Are we slaves to clothing, or are we better off expressing ourselves however the hell we want? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Before I go ahead and roll the credits, I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters. Video Gamer 75, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gerston, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Freebrick, RNG or Shuffles 1498, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Johnny Tsunami, Link Pendrago, Bricken, Caitlin P, Vladimirovna, Succubus Sakura, and SF Giants fan Mike. Thank you all so much. Thanks for watching!
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
celebrate your fandom!